Good evening. Welcome to our Tuesday, October 25th, rescheduled Finance Committee meeting at 5:30. It is 5:35 p.m. Call to order. We will begin by introducing board members, starting over here. Diane Potter, Becky Fless,
Chris McWallen,
Nicole Medore,
administrative staff.
Pat Hopkins, superintendent.
Andrea Dish, business manager.
Josh Farr, adult education director.
Karen McGuire, Director of Technology.
Thank you. First on the agenda is the discussion of regional adult ed program.
So I'm gonna distribute something that Josh has put together. When Josh was hired, how many years ago now? Three? 3 years ago, he and I had a conversation about the possibility of doing some regionalization of adult ed. As you know, he works part-time for us and part-time for Winthrop. And in between, there's RSU 2 that doesn't currently have an adult ed program. COVID hit, kind of stalled the conversations. There were lots of
one.
I guess.
Okay.
there were lots of things that kind of stalled the conversation, but we're now in the place where I guess we're here to present some ideas that Josh has put together, and just to seek permission to engage in this conversation with other school districts, because if you're not interested in us engaging with other school districts, then this will stop right here. But that's really the purpose. Not that we have talked to any other school district yet, not that we've really put in significant amount of work behind the scenes. It's just an idea, a way of expanding our program and potentially saving money for the taxpayers in MSAD11. I've said enough. I tried to set the stage, but if you could maybe stand up at the
I will.
the podium and walk through some of the information that you've provided.
Right, so this is the, I guess, a rough draft about pooling the resources, which would include state subsidies and grants. Knowing kind of the influence of what this might do to the grants is difficult, but the subsidy, in any case that any of the options, I guess I put forward in this, the subsidy would definitely increase. Even if we just joined with Winthrop in a couple of years, we could see potential about $8,000 coming more from the state. So, but that's the idea, is how do we maximize that? How do we put those resources together so that we can, have positions, whether teaching, instructing, advisors that have more time, can be paid a little bit better. That's being able to, if you think about Winthrop having a few $1,000s for college and career advising, which is in here, and we'll talk about that. And you think about us having more than that, you put those together, we can get about $30,000 together, right? So that could be, hiring somebody with that kind of money is easier than with $7,000 or with $22,000. So, so it creates options that maybe wouldn't be available otherwise. And if you add in RSU2, you see other things, and then we'll get into that. But there are multiple high schools in kind of the area we're looking at. RSU2 covers from Richmond and Dresden all the way to Monmouth. And so that would add, there would be there would be 4 high schools. We would be looking at the same services we currently provide. HiSET, adult career and college advising courses, certificate training, CNA program that we already work with. Interesting, the high school diploma. In such a case, we get some options to talk with other school districts about different courses that can be offered and different pathways that can be put together with different curriculums that are out there, right? So there's some options there. Those are a little further down the line, but that's, I think that's kind of exciting to think about. All the things that we are listed here are kind of the same services. Our priority though, if we go with something like this to start, would be really on the high school completion pathway and the college and career advising. And really, one of the challenges with adult ed is we have to find our students sometimes. And so I think this gives us the option to, some of this could give us the option to do a little more outreach and pulling people in. So to give you a sense of where we fit with other programs, I put the program size down here, the full size of RSU2, MSAD11, and Winthrop will be about 35,000 people. The next closest regional, Augusta, serves an area around 40,000. So we'd be about similar in number of folks, but we'd be spread out over a bit more area.
And you have a comparison in here for Waterville. Do you know what their population is?
I did not, I added them in because they're close and getting close in size to Augusta. When I pulled out these registration numbers, I don't know the full, but they're a regional area. They are based in Waterville, but Messalonsky and other folks all feed into that.
Right, and Winslow, I think it's
Winslow,
Winslow, Waterville, and Messalonsky, so
Do we-
RSU 18.
Do we know how they share costs within that district?
So I am not familiar with how they share costs in Waterville. I could tell you how a couple other programs share costs. And I actually did reach out to Hannah to find out how they do that.
And I would think, if I could interject, I would think that type of thing is going to be like, if the board has any interest in pursuing it, that's the type of detail and specificity we would have to get
Yeah.
into. Yep.
If you look down the highway a little bit to Mary Meeting Adult Ed, they are with 3 sizable school districts feeding to that program. Their cost is done similarly to how I have looked at it here, in that it's based on the population. And the cost of the program is split amongst the municipalities based on the number of people that live in those municipalities.
Do we know how
Census.
their merger affected their ED 279? Because a portion of adult ed goes into the district's ED 279.
So that would be a negotiation, really. Each district would need to do the ED 279. There could be agreement that one district, say the district that is fiscally kind of responsible for the regional adult ed, they would maybe all of the 16 to 20-year-old numbers, which is where that comes into the EDF.
Mhm.
You can make agreement to have all of that be counted under one district, right? So if we have 16, 20-year-old money from RSU2, Winthrop, and MSAD11,
Mhm.
when I do my EFX 130, what is it? Or not EFX, it's another form, I can't. 39AB or something on NEO, then I would be able, based on that agreement with the other districts, to include all of them. So you can do it that way, which I believe is how they do it in Mary Meeting, is at the district. And then there's also agreement that a portion of that money comes back into the adult ed program.
Okay.
Now, it could also, and there's another program that could leave it where I would have to do the 16 to 20, but each district would get that money.
So when you say goes back into the program, do you mean like the districts
Like here,
money
some of
that
that
they-
money comes back
Right.
into,
in MSAD11, we provide money in our local budget to give back to adult ed every year?
Yep.
In the form of revenue. Is that what you were referring to?
yes. So
Okay.
so there could be agreement to do that. There could be no agreement that everybody keeps what they get.
Mhm.
And so Winthrop, for example, does not put money back that they get from media, though they're smaller, so it's not a huge amount. It's not a substantial amount of money, it is a little bit. They hang on to it in the general fund.
So it's a formal agreement on how students would be counted towards the
Yep.
ED
That would
279,
be included.
and the state would accept that.
Yes.
Okay. Sorry.
So as long as they're not counted twice, that's, they
I
don't,
would I would
they don't want
imagine.
them counted. They don't
No.
want them, yeah.
Gotcha.
So, so just quickly on the area and the size. Registration numbers are really tricky in adult ed. I pulled these from our reports. They overlap and intersect, so it looks odd, you know, that we might have 50 high school completion registrations, 97 basic registration, and you know, when you think the basic registration would include all the high school completion registrations. There's a lot of stuff I could go into on why that isn't the case. So the best thing I could do to kind of give you a picture of how we compare was to give you all of them broken down. High school, sometimes people count towards something, sometimes they don't. And that can be related to federal counting, federal reporting standards or whatever. So I was trying to get down what's the absolute raw number. It's really difficult in how we have to count. So that's service area size. Benefits. Shared responsibility. So, you know, as this was, I think, which is also in a challenge. Routine operation with multiple districts opens up opportunities to support all of our students. So we can offer courses in multiple locations. We can focus on all the communities and using them to the benefit of every other community. Increased participation and shared experience among students. Right now, it's possible we have a class of 3 students, and in Winthrop we could have a class of 2 or 3 also, and then say we added RSU 2 and we had 2 or 3, right? Then we've got 3 teachers. You know, if they were separate, you've got 3 teachers teaching 9 students, right? So whereas you might actually have a better class experience with, you got 9 students and 1 teacher. Some of them are remote. Sometimes you can make combinations of how you deliver that class, creative in that way, and allow people not to have to travel so much. That's not to say every class would do that, but you can find those opportunities by sharing their responsibility. So I think the experience could be better for some students in some of our academic work. And, you know, and that goes to the efficient delivery. Professional learning community. It's good to have people who do the same thing you do. Teachers, I know my teachers have benefited when we had the opportunity to be together with Winthrop at times. And we would simply be able to build upon that and without worries about trying to figure out in 2 places how they're going to get paid for that. You know, instructors and curriculum efforts among multiple schools. So we currently, when I can reach to people who I know have certification here in the high school, I would actually be in a better position to connect with teachers who might help program-wide from Halldale or from Winthrop availability. So I think that helps with that learning community. And obviously increased visibility and awareness in the local communities. So pooled resources, funding from additional communities always helps. Can help lower the cost. That's some of that. So subsidy would absolutely increase. Subsidy is a reimbursement. I've tried to be very conservative in my estimate of about 40% of what we expend in our local funds can get reimbursed. It actually, I think, works out or has worked out higher than that, but or sometimes it's lower depending on certain things. We've also had the pandemic the last 2 years, so that throws it off. But I went with a 40% estimate based on kind of what I've seen. So if we increase the amount that is locally spent, it increases the amount that comes in. And while you think it would just add up the same, it actually helps us out. pooled resources. It's hard right now for us to offer diploma credit offerings. I think an increased access to student offering one class for one student means half a credit. And whereas if we also have students who are working in other high schools, and we can kind of say, oh, again, we have 4 or 5 students who need a health class. Now we can offer the health class, and we're not having one instructor do a class for one person. And it takes us a long time to get someone through high school diploma credit, but I think we'd be better able to do it. We'd have 2.5 full-time administrative assistants in 2 sites initially. I think that gives us backup and allows us to, streamline some administrative work. If someone has to be out, like we've had today in Winthrop, someone was out. And yesterday, Jen was out here, but Beth was in over in Winthrop. There's no reason Beth couldn't answer phones for people calling in and be able to be responsive, whether it be to enrichment or other inquiries. So we're talking a much larger area we'd be kind of targeting for enrichment. Much more than twice the size. So and with that, I hope that the income could possibly support programming or part-time staff member who coordinates a lot of that. So responsive programming. I think I talked a little bit about team collaboration being better. It would open me to be less about day-to-day stuff and more about community needs assessments, program quality improvement, and program development or service development. Class times, it's very simply put, we just talk high set. You have 4 options right now. If you come into ours, sometimes we do individual appointments, but you have 4 kind of class times for high set prep, which include double that because it's in person and remote, so that's 8. Now you start adding, so someone lives in Farmingdale, or even they live here, but they have transportation. Now I've got a different time and space maybe going on in Halldale. Or they work here in Gardner, right? But they live in Winthrop, or they live in Richmond, or wherever. All of the communities can benefit because now they just have more access. There's more opportunity. I've got another 4 times that I can look, or another 8 times that I can look at in different places. Maybe I can get to them, maybe I can't, but there's more option for that. And this would naturally lead itself to some new branding and marketing strategy. I mean, if you join programs, we'd probably talk about, does it have like Mary Meeting? There's 3 school districts. They took that name. It's, I guess the Bay is named Mary Meeting. Right?
Yes.
So they took that from that, and it's a great name for that. So maybe there's a name for this. I have ideas, but I won't go with that. But there's an idea for this. And we need to, the state has recently put some grant monies out there for us to be able to do some marketing initiatives. So we could pool those and it would go along with this change nicely. It's obviously going to be a more dynamic communication and supervision model when you've got 3 superintendents and 3 school boards that you're answering to. There's lots of different policies and procedures have to be worked out for instructors and staff. Mary Meeting, for example, staff at one site follow all policies and procedures of that school district while they're there, dress code, everything, and yet but are paid by the other district and are considered employees of the other district, but get access and privileges over here. Computer details like computers, how do you set the computers up would have to be worked out. There's a lot of details. More facilities for academic and enrichment program. We have to work out the access to that and how do you do that reasonably. And there's always complications of getting bigger, fear of decreasing quality in the services you already provide. I think that to me has been clear in kind of thinking about here and thinking about Winthrop. Is a worry that we're going to lose our own identity by doing this. Does that hurt our services that we provide? So that's a challenge. And funding and the funding formula. If, for example, in some of what we talk about, RSU2 jumped on board, it comes in around equal partner, be $126,000 to be an equal partner with Winthrop and MSAD11. That's a big ask to say, hey, you want to add $126,000 to your budget next year. So that's kind of a challenge. It might make more sense for something like a 3 to 4 year agreement where you can realize some of the subsidy benefits first. And then at that point, you might be able to explore, that's a plan of exploring. We realize some of the subsidy benefits. Maybe RSU2 is going to come up and then we can go down a little and see how the services are going. So that's kind of the plan. Questions so far? No. Am I moving along quick enough?
I would condense it, I think.
Okay, I'll condense.
Peter, although Diane has a question.
Oh, I just wanted to ask, you have knowledge of Winthrop because you work there too, right? But as RSU2, is it sounding like they are interested?
I've only had a couple conversations and they have a new superintendent. It's not been really like deep, like, it's more like can we talk about this?
And that's really, we haven't done that. We want your permission first. So unless we have your permission, we can't really go out and engage in those conversations anyways, so.
Okay.
So
Yeah.
RSU2 did invite me, because I'm a Monmouth resident, and they knew I was an adult ed, they invited me to their future search process for their strategic planning. When they did that last year. And so they have, that's where I know there's some interest. There's not a lot more to go.
Where do current residents of RSU2 go to get their high set?
Well, in the last year, we've been getting some calls from folks from Farmingdale and Halldale who sometimes are going to Augusta and are typically referred to Augusta if they're referred. The folks we have been seeing are folks who don't want the kind of program that they have at Augusta. They want something that feels a little more intimate, which I think we would continue to provide in this kind of region. So, yeah, on occasion we have someone from Farmingdale or someone from Richmond who comes through our program.
And I assume that our enrichment programs also draw from the RSU2 community.
Yes.
We get.
Yes.
Okay.
So
You said $126,000 for RSU2. Is that because they don't have a real adult ed program now?
right. So
That's
this is the next piece, and this is good. This is the funding, right? Not knowing what, RSU doesn't spend anything on anything right now, right? It's RSU2. So you're like, how do you figure that out? How do you bring them in? And so by kind of figuring on I broke it down. Here's the cost that we put in for Winthrop. Here's the cost that we put in for.
I think that's on page 5.
Yeah.
Yes.
Page 5.
So the costs that you're breaking down are by population. Have you given any thought of doing it by valuation?
So
Which is typically how the ED 279 and costs are shared amongst districts. in the state.
So I would just caution, we're digging deep. That's all work that would happen behind the scenes.
Okay.
This is just an idea.
Yeah.
And here's just an idea of what the funding could be. But none of that work, Andrea, we haven't talked about it. We haven't assessed it. We haven't done any of it.
I'm just concerned that we're breaking out the amount to each town based on students, which we don't which isn't what we traditionally do, and I wouldn't want anyone to base their decision on that, when I don't think that is what we're going to be required to do. So I guess that's why I'm putting that out there.
So this is how Mary Meeting's agreement breaks down their funding, is by census number. So I don't know, we probably would have to get clarity from the state on if I'm assuming if Mary Meeting has been able to do it, that we'd be doing it too. And I think the tough part of that for me is, in order to try and figure out how to bring someone in at the same level of support, do we want to use valuation for that, or is it more appropriate for adult ed to use the population? And I lean towards, knowing how many people are in the district, that we're dealing with adults from a wide range. I feel like that would be appropriate, and then it would be consistent to break it down by town or municipality in dividing that up. But it's conceivable you could say, okay, we're going to figure the big picture is this, and then each district has to ask based on valuation.
I think what I'm saying to you is, when we divide by our 4 towns,
Yep.
we're going to be required to divide by valuation and not by population. However, you're right, we may be able to do a larger or a different breakdown at the 3-town level.
Well, it's a good thing to look at it, because I understand that Mary Meeting is not required to do it by valuation, because they have a different agreement. And it's adult ed, so I don't know.
So again, I would say you guys are in the weeds.
Okay,
And
sorry.
This is
There's
not
lots
what
of
this
weeds.
conversation is about. There are a lot of weeds. And so what we really need to do is to just give her a general sense of what it could look like. But there would have to be a group of knowledgeable people, including business managers, who would be
Right.
sitting at the table, hashing out and deciding what is best. So Andrea, you would have to have some time set aside to really engage in this conversation.
And some of these conversations, what I am saying is, they might be out of our,
Right,
it may be something decided at the state level and not something that we can decide amongst ourselves or even amongst the 3 towns. I guess that's my
Yeah.
whole point.
I guess what I would hope for is that if there's any interest in pursuing the conversation, is for us to reach out to those superintendents, see if there's interest, gauge their degree of interest, and encourage like a subcommittee to come together to then look at the information that Josh has put together, which is great. You really did a nice job pulling this together, and then start looking at all of these financial options and figure out exactly what it would look like, and then assess
Yep.
where we go from there.
So I guess this isn't something that would go into effect. I mean, we're going to begin our budget, we're going to begin budgeting, or I'm going to begin budgeting for next year, starting probably next month. Do you envision this being a 23-24 thing, a 20?
When we had spoken, we had hoped it would be 23-24, but that doesn't mean it's a reality. I don't know. Once you get 10 people around a table, it could take a year or so to pull this together.
so,
Or RSU too could say, look, we want to be in 100%, but you know what? We want a couple of years to be able to set that funding aside or whatever.
and that's what's next on the proposal, is kind of 3 partnerships. The first one, which I think is perhaps probably the easiest step, would be a straight up partnership with Winthrop, and what that might look like. Both, and I think the interesting thing here is both Winthrop and MSAD11 come with some carryover. So I've been in Winthrop for a while, so they would be able to contribute into that. The carryover funds can supplement the budget to do some of the things we want to. And then we can, if you throw that up next to maybe the third one, which is page 6, which is kind of a partial 3-district regional program. The idea being that maybe just MSAD11 and Winthrop firm their relationship, and then we start some kind of, in this case, I say contract with RSU2. We're going to offer just a couple services. We'll do that. Maybe that brings you in at a lower level. You see if that garners more support, and then
I'll make it real simple. So you're saying you're gonna increase our opportunities
that's what I believe.
and decrease our cost?
I believe we can decrease our
Then
cost.
I'm in favor of talking to them.
Okay,
That's, if that's what our
That's what
goal
we're gonna
is.
do, absolutely, yep.
If we're gonna be increasing costs to serve other districts, then that's when I'd have a concern. But if
Right.
our portion will decrease and
Right,
a
and
better
then-
opportunity,
yeah.
it's worth a conversation, but we can't see that until the numbers come back and you
Right.
do
And what I
you
did
the weeds.
do under the funding section is that was meant to show you how it impacts the potential. Say we increase by 10, say in a year, we have to
Saw
do
that.
something new,
Yeah.
the state requires an insurance. I don't know what it is. We have a project.
We're fully funding it versus a third funding of it.
Right, right. Then you can see how that breaks down. It's less. So, for us,
We don't have to make any decisions tonight until we see all the numbers and how it looks and
Are these the only 2 partners we've thought about merging with if we approach?
no, there's potential, I think, for discussion with Marana Cook, who also is in a regional service center with us. But their program is, I think, thinking about this with the capacity, knowing the director up there and his focus and emphasis right now on some of their workforce stuff, particularly CDL program that they're going full force on. It probably wouldn't be within his capacity to kind of consider this right now, and whether or not this would be good for them, but it might. So I haven't really.
Yeah, I mean, RSU 38 never occurred to me. When Andrea asked the question, I immediately thought about RSU 12.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Do they not have a program?
They have or they used to have a very small program. I don't know if they still do.
And
But
would we not be interested in teaming with somebody like Augusta to create a program as big as the Waterville, Winslow, Messalonsky? I mean, that's quite a,
Augusta's, yeah, Augusta's already as big as Waterville, Messel. I mean, they're already serving a population that of similar size in their registration side. I think, yeah, so I think I wouldn't want to get too big too quick. That would be, I think that would be the worry that I would have, but I don't see why there isn't, if this happens, why you couldn't in the future go, yeah, let's talk to so-and-so. And it's similar to what's happened with regional high schools and the school consolidation. There used to be twice as many or more adult ed programs across the state. But you have to have a master's level certification to be a director. There are rising expectations on the administrative piece that they want you to do. Makes it really hard even for Winthrop to have a program of their own. Nevertheless, do anything more than just the basics, right? So, and we're not in that situation. We're a little bigger. We're kind of medium, small, medium, Portland is the largest program in the state. We're not gonna look like them. So
Forever.
yeah, probably not forever. Although I will say, Winthrop is seeing more, every year we are seeing a couple English language learners, which was not something, because, all the folks who've come into the state are moving out into other parts of the state. And so I anticipate that'll just continue to grow. There'll be more people learning English and asking us for that. So,
Perfect way to get it.
yeah.
so is the consensus around the table that we should pursue a conversation?
Yep, let's have a chat.
I've been thinking a lot about this, so I apologize for talking so much.
No, it's good. I mean,
No, you're passionate about it. Don't apologize. It's a good idea.
No, I just feel like that the financial stuff is great.
Yeah.
And it's good for us to look at. I just don't know that it needs an in-depth conversation because there's no decision at this point. We
Right.
just want to have a conversation.
It's an example of how it might look, but not how it is gonna.
Oh my
Correct.
gosh, yeah, I tried that and it got really confusing.
Yeah. But I think it's important for you to see. So it's
Absolutely.
really good work. So thank you, Josh.
Thank you, Josh,
Thank
a
you.
lot. Next, revolving renovation fund update. Do you want to give an update? Do you want me? There really isn't much of an
Somebody,
update
anybody.
at this point. We were not able to move forward with the revolving fund, I would say, as quickly as we initially wanted to. And in order to go through the process at the state, it does require that you have an engineer go through, and we had to, and that took a while to get an engineer selected because we had to send it out, do an RFP. And it just slowed down the whole process with how busy the director of transportation and operations has been. It just wasn't the priority. So we do have a company that has stepped forward, but they don't really have the time to do the assessment. And then if they did an assessment, they would have to pull the project together. So I don't think it's realistic that we're going to be able to submit an application for the revolving fund. The state has indicated that they want all school districts to do an assessment of their facilities so that they have a better understanding of what the real needs are throughout the state, because all we have right now is this revolving fund for $1 million, and we know $1 million does not go very far. And then you have the construction project. We've applied for the construction project and we're so far down on the list. So I'm kind of excited about the fact that they are going to somehow, I don't know how it's going to be done, but they're going to try to get these assessments done of all of the school facilities so that they can hopefully address the more long-term needs of school facilities. I mean, our schools are well taken care of, but they're old. You know, the high school was built in the 60s. The middle school is all piecemealed. We know that the elementary schools are newer, but they were still built in the 90s. They don't necessarily meet all the needs for today's demands. And we have 4 schools, and we know that it's more expensive to run 4 schools than to operate and run just 1 school.
The revolving renovation fund was very targeted as to what it could be used for. Air quality, you know that we've done a lot of work over the past years for air quality, including monies that we got from ESERF. So there are a lot of things on that list that we've already done. We identified maybe 1 or 2 projects, maybe the project with the removal of the asbestos, and then it all depended on basically who else put in an application and where they ranked in the list and what their anticipated project costs. So it's probably best at this point, considering the work that needs to be done, for us to bow out. The good news that I did hear at MASBO was that construction projects for the state, they plan to, according to Drummond Woods, reopen in 2024. So once again, the state will be putting out the.
Well, and if that's indeed the case, then I would suggest that this committee have a more in-depth conversation about its facilities. We've talked about, or you've talked about briefly, whether we should have 1 consolidated school for the elementary school. Some people are in favor, some people are not. I know that people love their neighborhood schools. There is a cost associated with that. So as a board or as a committee, I think you guys should decide at some point how you want to proceed. Because if you want to be in a position where you can submit an application, there's work to be done.
We want to be ready.
do
You
whatever,
need to be ready.
whatever we
So you
to
need
do.
to know what direction you want to head in.
And I think we should probably already also lightly tap the brakes as far as the amount of money we're putting into our new schools, which may be what you're saying. I just made a payment this week on work that was done at TC Hamlin for a school that is no longer ours. So when you bond or take out a lease or a loan, you're responsible for that portion regardless of whether the school remains yours. So we just, if that is the direction that we're thinking about going, I think we should be mindful about borrowing or taking out loans that we might be responsible for the next 20 years for schools, which we may or may not have.
Absolutely agree. We need to have a big picture looking forward. Where do we want to be? What do we want to look like in 20 years when our demographic is not necessarily growing? And where do we want to be? And people don't like paying higher taxes. None of us likes paying higher taxes.
The other thing that Bill mentioned is that the state has a pot of money available for what's called integrated projects for school districts to come together to create, like what used to be where Pat came from.
Like an adult education center.
Well, I was thinking more about consolidating with maybe another area to build a new high school. You know, finding somebody who might want to partner with us to build a brand new high school and come together for such a project. And according to Bill, those projects seem to be fast tracked. So, I mean, I think there's a lot of potential out there. Ideas,
Yeah,
just ideas.
time to talk about them.
Adult population is not getting smaller.
Our high school is very old.
Yeah.
It is very old.
You're
So,
right, it is very old, and we're guilty of taking really good care of it.
mhm,
But we also have this other need of
an elementary school.
one
So
elementary school. And when I look at the numbers of students in the middle school now versus not so long ago, we're just not, we need to be thinking about, and neighborhood schools are great.
the thought of a consolidated elementary school it just makes me giddy. Sorry. I'm really sorry. It really does. It would just be very exciting. So
It needs a life.
Yep.
I'm sorry, you need a life.
I
It's something
know.
like that.
I know.
Kidding.
Well, I think I think of it as not giddy, but very exciting, because I think of what we could provide for our youngest learners as they're beginning, at the very beginning of their learning path, you know, what we could do if we had more money, better resources,
Not so much duplication of services. so-
duplicating
Yep.
services, having teachers being able to plan together in the same building and just
It's just exciting.
Now you're making me get.
see.
There
You
it's
better really talk about it.
contagious.
Yeah, what we can do.
I've always been for that. I really am not against it. I just remember the fight for it when it was at one point supposed to be one in our backyard, which we weren't opposed to. And I don't want to mention names, but a former mayor standing in front of Hannaford with a sign saying, you know, your local school's gonna be next, they're gonna gobble them all up, you know, and I just thought that it'll be a factory, you know, and I thought, I don't think it'd be a factory, they're gonna have wings for the littlest kids and all that stuff, but I don't want to be afraid of the opposition, you want to make sense and be logical, but I'm for it, I just think there would be quite a brouhaha.
Well,
I think it's a future agenda item.
Absolutely.
For you all to discuss. And while it starts with this committee, you certainly want to make sure that the full board is aware of when that conversation is happening, so that they have the
Absolutely.
opportunity to participate.
and
So-
just another reminder, we're talking about a consolidated school. The CDS conversation does not appear to be going away. And if school districts are now going to be responsible
Right.
for CDS kids, we don't have any room in our current schools to house those kids. So another reason for us to maybe potentially talk about
Right,
consolidating.
and there's no secret plan or
No.
anything like that. It's really just
No.
we have to be responsible, look forward to what's being handed to us that we don't have choices about and where we need to go and where we need to be. And because we made decisions 25 years ago does not mean that those decisions can't be changed and made better.
And it's my
Different.
understanding that with CDS, that there, if we don't have facilities, that it would be our requirement to get those facilities that we would be responsible for building at our cost, not the states or so
We
anyway.
could contract out for services for that too. You'd have to take for that. That's another conversation too, right? To see what number of Part B students exist in our
Yep.
region, in our
Yep.
catchment area, to see what really those numbers would be
Yep.
potentially.
So,
And I'm sure they would want inclusive services, although some do require pullout services or special purpose classrooms.
Conversation.
yes, lots of
Continued.
conversations.
Yes, yeah. Okay. ESER 2 and ESER 3.
So I thought that I would just give you a brief update on the status of our ESSER funds. Sorry, this is actually complex, and what I've tried to do is condense a very complex spreadsheet.
By just doing smaller print.
Smaller print, I put it on on legal size, you should have
This is
seen
because
it.
of the meeting we were in earlier
Oh.
where you were saying condense.
Yeah, I
Look at
had
this
it
tiny
on.
print.
I had it on regular size paper. You should have seen
Yes.
it then. And I thought of you. And thought they're never gonna be able to see what's written here. So that's why it's on legal. But, so if you look at the top, I have the ESER 2 funds. ESER 2 funds, those expire at the end of this coming school year. So they have to be spent by June of 2023. As a reminder, that total budget was 1.6 million. You can see how much was budgeted for like class size reduction, trade books, the modular at Helen Thompson. Plus you can't see in here, there was some cleaning equipment for Gabe that was in here as well, some vacuums and things like that that needed to be updated. So you can see what we budgeted, we've expended 986,000, almost not $1 million. How much is remaining? Overall is about $205,000 is what we have left. So I'm looking at for this year, putting in one of our social workers, having one of those positions funded, and I'm gonna go back to that cafeteria floor, since we're maybe not gonna do the revolving fund. If we can get the high school cafeteria floor done, and get that abated, I'll be able to use some of that money.
Can I add that the LER social worker is a position that's now currently funded with ESER 3 monies?
Yes,
It's not funded with local monies,
yes.
so I just wanted to make sure. that
Yeah, we would be
everyone-
shifting it from ESER 3 up to ESER 2. So then that will expend hopefully all of those monies. Then looking at ESER 3 or ARP, we use those terms interchangeably. On the left-hand side, what I provided is kind of an update of all the projects. So as you go through, the first project was the class size reduction. And you can see again, how much was originally budgeted, how much we spent, and what is remaining is in the 6th column over in bold. So we have the class size reduction, we had mental health and wellness, that's where our social workers were. We had summer school, you can see that we've actually overexpended, as you flip the next page, we overexpended that. The window replacements, we had windows replaced at Riverview, LER, and the high school, we overexpended that by 15,000. The outdoor classrooms, that hasn't happened yet. I don't know if it will happen. Things look a little differently now than when we were proposing. The systematic explicit instruction, we have $782 left in that. That had to do with a lot of the purchase of our curriculum that is now in place. We had a lot of purchases, supplies. The after-school program, we budgeted and we don't have, we didn't spend any money there. Sorry, that was supposed to be highlighted in yellow and I missed that. We didn't spend any money there. Finding staff, after the last 2 years, we found that not this past summer, the previous summer, our enrollment with the students, it was very low. So we just weren't able to get the energy to have an after-school programming this past summer beyond just our ESY, which is our extended school year for our special ed students. Heat pumps, we haven't spent the $360,000 that we had budgeted. However, we have a plan now in place. And we're actually going to transfer some of the money from places that we haven't spent into the heat pumps at Helen Thompson. And so we're going to increase that total overall to $432,000. And that will get us 17 heat pumps. And that's not, when we use the term heat pumps, it's not the same thing as what you see in a home or a business where you have a heat pump on the wall. That's not what this heat pump is. It is a system that was built into the ceilings. It is when the school was built, it's part of our heating system. Without these heat pumps, our airflow just isn't working, and the heating of the building is not efficient. But you're not going to walk into a classroom and see a heat pump like we've come to expect. But this will take care of 17 heat pumps that we can no longer repair. We have to put in some new systems. This will make sure that the units that supply airflow to every single classroom will be updated, okay? Which we felt was really our priority, to make sure that airflow in the classroom was up to code. We didn't do the contact tracing for the nurse. Some of these, what you'll see with some of these positions, and Andrea can talk about it, that there's federal requirements that she has to meet. And because of some of those federal reporting requirements, it was too complicated, too difficult to actually use the federal dollars. It was easier to take the money else from other places than to take it from here. So just because I have $30,000 for a lead nurse and contact tracing doesn't mean we didn't spend money last year. It's just the funding came from other sources. Same with like COVID subs. I set aside $175,000. We didn't use it. We used it elsewhere. Do you want to talk about some of those restrictions?
The COVID subs last year, we took all out of Easter too. So it was being paid federally. This year, there aren't just many, a lot of the COVID subs that we had last year were full-time COVID subs. The decision was made that we no longer have those this year. So we're just paying subs out of the local budget. There are additional requirements when using federal monies for employees. There are a lot of certifications that need to happen throughout the year. And if somebody has multiple funding streams, it gets very complicated and it creates a huge amount of paperwork in our office. And sometimes the paperwork that's being created takes more time of the payroll person. Just for a day or a couple of days for COVID subs, it was not worth the amount of time it took the two of us, Ginger and I, to be able to pay it out of federal money. So some of those decisions, we are not, like I said, we are not using as much we're not using COVID subs, permanent COVID subs like we did last year. So In other areas with purchasing, it requires, especially when contracting for Gabe's projects, it requires us looking at the federal, how much the federal, it requires the contractor to produce reports on his staff. So it requires whoever Gabe is hiring to produce reports for us to then have to be able to provide to the Fed. So in some cases, it's really demanding to use federal money. In most cases, it's easiest when we're paying people out of one funding stream, like our class size reduction teachers. They're in a classroom, they do the same work all day, it's being paid out of the same federal grant. It requires a semi-annual certification. And the same with social workers. But when you have people and you have a lot of things, when you have subs coming in who are taking local jobs and COVID jobs, like I said, when you cross those two, it just requires a lot of paperwork on our end. And the amount of time that it was taking Gabe's to get, I know I'm going back and forth between employees and contractors, but there's just a lot of paperwork that's required even when contracting to adhere to the federal rates that were required to make sure that they're paying their employees. So it's time consuming. It's easiest when we are using our federal dollars to buy things, stuff, and employees who are funded solely from one position. So we've kind of picked and chosen the best place to be able to take this and to move things back and forth between federal and local to make it equitable, but not make it burdensome, I guess that's the word. I don't know, I felt like I just did that.
You butchered it some, but we got it.
Basically, we're still gonna spend that money somewhere.
Yeah.
It's just easier to spend it elsewhere than where it's currently
We're
sitting.
spending it places
Yes.
that doesn't have the extra
It
layer of
shouldn't,
complication.
it shouldn't take upstairs 2 weeks to create reports for subs who may have like a day or two out of federal, but because they're being paid for a day or two out of federal, now these huge reports and certifications have to be produced. It is burdensome. And I know that everyone is happy to see federal money. I am too, as long as,
But it can be spent elsewhere easier, is what you're saying.
Yes,
that is exactly what I'm saying.
yeah, and as long as it's legal, that's good, and we know, we know it's legal.
Yeah.
So then looking back, we have instructional coaches, so you can see what we budgeted. And what we spent, and we had left about 235,000 there. The business office, we had budgeted money to hire support for Andrea. It's not always that easy if you don't understand what to do behind the scenes. It takes more work. And we tried some creative alternatives, and those people ended up not being interested in doing what we had hoped. Special ed, spent some on, it's a DALS, it has to do with assessment for special ed. The Pittston Randolph parking, expanded parking actually came in slightly under. The athletic fields, that work was done, but it's along the same lines of what Andrea said. It was easier to take some of those funds out elsewhere. The heat server, actually, it's not done. We're still in the process, but it came in about $3,800 more than what we had budgeted. It had increased. The middle school bathroom, that was completed, but it was done in-house. So there was about $5,000 worth of supplies that Gabe just took out of his line, and they did the work, so there was no labor there. PPE, we ended up, after we budgeted this, the state was giving us a lot of free PPE, so we didn't need it after all. And then the repairs to the parent drop-offs came in, again, below what we had budgeted. That was some of the paving that we had done
The
this
traffic circle
past
stuff.
year, yeah.
Yep.
So looking at the next section in the middle, for this year, we have, again, class size reduction. I've listed the positions, how much it's gonna cost. And based on who we've hired, we're actually gonna have a little bit more money left over than what we have anticipated. The ARP money doesn't have to be expended until June 24. So we had built a budget for 2 years to end in 23, but now you'll see I have another section called 23-24 expenses. So this is not complete. We're trying to pull this together right now to make sure that we know what we have remaining before we commit to a third year. But what we're thinking is that this year we'll finish the class size reduction. We have the social worker. We had 2, we've moved up, one up to ESER 2. We'll pay the second one out of the ARP. And we should have some money left. So we're thinking that maybe next year, using ARP, we'll still be able to fund those 2 social worker positions for another year, which we absolutely know we can use. That having them in the district has been a huge benefit, and we're keeping them quite busy from what I understand. Looking at the next page, I've already talked about the fact that the heat pumps, we want to increase there. We also think that we'll have, this year, we also had planned on our instructional coaching positions continuing. So we'll keep with the instructional coach over at Riverview at Helen Thompson. And we were not able to hire a math coach this year. Our math coach went into a different position. So instead, Angela has secured some support, some coaching support from outside organizations like Great School Partnership. And so the coaching is available, it's just not from a staff member, okay? And then Lexia, that is our online fee, our subscription fee for Lexia. We had taken it out of the budget. It's a 3-year subscription that we use in our English language arts program. So what I'm thinking is that, again, we may have enough funds left over that we can extend the coaching into a 3rd year. I would see that as a priority. That has been so effective. This year, we've hired so many new staff members. We want to make sure that we have the supports in place to continue to support them as they learn new curriculum, as they learn a new district. And then that, for the most part, is it. Special ed, they do have to purchase another subscription for their assessment program. And as I said, the heat server is about $3,800, almost $3,900 more than what we had anticipated. So there's still some money left over, we think, that we'll be able to push 23, 24. I just need to figure out exactly what that's going to be before I commit it. The one thing, another thing that's not on this list that I would like to fund is some of the strategic planning that we can, I believe that we can justify the community input as part of our strategic planning under the ARP for year 2. I had hoped that it would be ESER 3, but unfortunately, I mean ESER 2, but unfortunately, as you can see, our funds have all gobbled up with that. So
year 2.
yes, year 2 under 22, 23.
Yep. I'm just making notes for myself.
Yeah. So
Okay.
that's a lot of information, but I guess if
Crystal
you have
clear.
any questions, is it crystal clear?
It's pretty clear.
Okay, good.
Yeah, it is
Good.
pretty clear.
So we're gonna have a math coach for the middle school under something else.
Right now, the math coach, it's a purchase service. We don't have an individual that we've hired on staff. We weren't successful in hiring someone. So we have a contract with, I think it's Great School Partnership, Maine Math Science Alliance, through some outside organizations providing that support. So it's available, it just looks differently.
Somebody comes in and from the outside and provides teachers with support, so like in district professional
Just those
development.
coaches, I got giddy over them. I just think it's such a wonderful idea. If you've ever taught school, you know, and the way she handles it seems really good.
They are phenomenal. And do we want to have a coach on staff, a math coach at the middle school? Absolutely.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. If we could get one, that would be our first choice.
And while it seems to be easy to figure out how much money we have from year to year, you remember staff members, their benefits change. Sometimes they change their health insurance plan. Sometimes they have a child. Sometimes, you know, somebody loses a job and their whole family. So it's constantly in motion and flux. And so this is what we're trying to nail down. So, but yeah.
Trying to nail down flowing water. You can't do that.
Exactly. That's a very good analogy.
Oh, golly, yeah. Wow, well, good work. Fuel and electricity update. We still have them, right?
Well, the good news is we have lights. So shortly after our last finance meeting, Competitive Energy Services, he's the consultant that we use to help us gauge the market, suggested that we go out to bid for electricity because our current electricity offer was going to expire in December of this year. We wanted to make sure that the lights continued to go on. Now, I want to remind you, the last time that we went out to bid, I believe it was 4 or 5 years ago, and we got an excellent rate of about 6 cents a kilowatt hour. Unfortunately, the times that we are in right now do not warrant such great rates. So on December 9th, we're going from about a 6 cents per kilowatt hour to about a 15 cents per kilowatt hour for the next 2 years.
2 years.
Yep, we're going to ride this out for 2 years to see what happens, and that is the recommendation. So the longer that you sign, the lower the rate does. But if everything turns around, what you don't want to be is locked in
Right.
a contract when you're paying 13 cents. It's not worth it for us to save an extra 2 or 3 cents per kilowatt hour for the next. Anyway, so the additional amount adds about $180,000 a year to our budget, going from 6 cents a kilowatt hour to 0.158 cents.
It's 186.
I'm sorry,
How much did you say?
180,000. And again, that's
Numbers.
based on past usage. It's,
It's just numbers.
you know,
Okay,
depends how many times we're flipping the lights on and off, but it's not what any of us want to hear.
If it goes down,
We are locked for 2
you're
years.
locked.
That was the great thing about us
Yeah.
this year, when everyone else's rates went to 11 cents or 12. We were still locked at 6 cents. I mean, we had savings that few people had over the last 5 years. So, and remember, we still have those energy projects that consortium that we've signed on. So they are in the process of also generating through those solar projects. For those of you who don't remember, we partnered through CES, through Competitive Energy Services, in a large consortium that includes Bowdoin and Kobe and the University of Maine. I mean, we are in this with some big partners. Some of the projects have been delayed because of COVID and the ability to get materials to get these solar panels up and going. But for any of you who have traveled the highway recently, you see that more projects are popping up. And as they pop up, we will earn credits and we will sell our renewable energy credits that we're also generating. So it will be another revenue stream. So I know this is not what any of us want to hear, but it's only for 2 years. Regarding diesel, since we talked about it last time, we have still not gone out to bid for diesel. we are waiting to pick a sweet spot. And it's always hard to decide whether now's the sweet spot or, when we were discussing this in February, who knew that the war in Ukraine was going to begin and then things would slowly start to. But we're waiting for that new sweet spot. As I reminded you last month, we started the year with 30,000 gallons of diesel. So we're still paying a fairly decent rate from last year. And we will settle on either a price or what we will do is we will pay as we go rather than lock in something that is untenable for the next year. So that is the deal with diesel and electricity. The other conversation that I wanted to share with you is a conversation that I shared with Pat. I'm not sure if those of you who read the papers these days, but there was an article in the paper about Summit and natural gas and how they intend to restructure and approach the PUC about a huge rate increase. Basically, they want to, for lack of a better term, they want to resettle their debts, or they want to consolidate. Or I'm trying to think of a word. Basically, what they want to do is they have not expanded as quickly as they thought they would, and doing their projects in the past, they've created a lot of debt, and they want a way of gaining more revenue, and they want to do by obviously passing it along to the consumers, which is us. So we have natural gas at the high school, the middle school, LER in this office. We had at that time brand new burners that now burn natural gas. In theory, the cheapest fuel that we should be able to secure is the one that's piped in, but not if they're going to add a lot of additional costs to that. So we have entertained a conversation, in a conversation with CES, what it would look like and whether or not we can switch our burners out for something else and then look at something else. What I'm going to tell you is this conversation is going on, but we need to be mindful of what the PUC is going to let Summit do. Summit cannot pass these costs along without going through the PUC. So we've got one eye on what's going on at the PUC and another eye of the cost for us for conversion. It doesn't make sense to spend a ton of money converting our existing burners to something else if we're not going to be able to recoup it. So I just wanted to let you know that there has been nothing decided, that we're watching many conversations, and I've been talking with Competitive Energy Services about what our options may be. Questions?
No, but that's just such a drag.
It is very hard when we live in a state where people have to heat their homes. I mean, there is no choice. It's not like you live in Florida where cooling is a choice. I mean, it's just very disheartening where we are, where the electricity and energy costs at this point. And it's just is what it is. But I just wanted to let you know that there are conversations going on.
Is Augusta Natural Gas going to do the same thing?
Augusta Natural Gas? I do not. Summit, whoever has hooked up with Summit is in the same boat.
Right, but what I'm wondering is, I mean, natural gas is a public utility, right? So if natural gas goes up, wouldn't it?
It is my understanding that the only natural gas provider in this area is Summit. So that would be a further conversation. But,
Yeah. No, there's Augusta Natural
No,
Gas.
you're thinking of Maine Natural Gas, which is a subset of CMP. They have a.
But they may not provide
I don't think they provide the actual gas.
gas. Some areas of the state have choices for natural gas.
Mhm.
Some areas do not.
Right.
And it's
And I did know
basically,
that, yeah.
and it's basically, it's a decision companies make based on
I remember when.
the
all these
amount of
lines were in,
customers.
Mhm.
Summit's the one that put all these lines in.
Right.
Summit is the one that put the
Summit
lines in, yes.
expects, it was Summit's prediction to expand at a rate much larger than what actually happened.
Mhm.
And now they've accrued a lot of debt to do what they did. And now they're basically not expanding. And I can't imagine any other natural gas company coming in with so few customers. The places that have a lot of, that have choice, Lewiston, Auburn area, and I know that Portland has choice. Based on the conversation that I had with CES, there is not choice here, and I think,
Okay.
we do not go out to bid for natural gas because there's only been one player.
Yeah, and at the time I thought it was weird that there was something else, but yeah, okay.
So it's conversations, and I just, like I
Yeah.
said, I just wanted to make you aware.
We'll just burn more wood.
Go back to pellets. I know we never did pellets, but there are options. There's, you know, there's propane, there's, I can't even think. There are options for us to switch our burners over, but
Depends on what the rates come back at, and what PUC allows.
mhm.
Well, I would like to think the PUC would look at the demographic and the bigger picture. But who knows?
Yeah.
Well, on that happy note,
Sorry, Debbie Downer.
I saw Summit on the list and I thought, oh no, this can't be good.
I was just on the PUC site. They're still having hearings and whatnot. I don't think this is something that's going to be decided. Right.
I guess we can adjourn.
Future items, is there anything that anybody wants to see before we?
Well, we're gonna have to have a conversation about facilities.
Yes, we are. We are, but that'll be a larger conversation.
Yeah, that doesn't have to happen next month.
Nope, but it
No.
does need to happen soon. The more we sit on it and don't have it because we're afraid it'll be uncomfortable.
Do we have any big holes in our staffing other than, we need a lot of ed techs?
Staffing, no, we've actually filled many of our ed tech positions. Transportation, we still need
Bus drivers.
bus drivers.
Alicia's special ed techs, I think she only has one or two, only a couple of them.
Yeah, we're in much better shape than we were.
Yep.
We always need substitutes. I know Angela was interviewing today for some substitutes. We had earlier in the week, maybe Monday, we had 16 positions that didn't have a sub assigned to them. That's a lot in a day.
Yeah.
So that means your staff who are in, who are picking up the slack.
Mhm.
So we always need additional substitutes.
And I recall someone saying that, you know, I guess at one point we used to have 2 gym teachers at the middle school. Now we have 1. Is that going okay?
Well, that is something we can talk about. I mean, that's not a conversation, I think, for finance. But I will let Angela know. And so that's something curriculum can talk about.
Okay.
I mean, I haven't heard any issues. I've actually heard that it's going okay, but I can mention it to her and ask her to give you guys an update. So.
I have no idea.
Yeah.
I didn't know if someone was strung out and then it was a lot or not, you know.
I,
Principal knows.
Yeah, Angela would be the better person
Uh-huh.
to respond to that, so, yeah, I can do that, Diane.
Yeah, I was
Okay.
interested.
Okay.
Yep, we should bring it to the full board so that everyone has that opportunity to hear. All right, then,
Okey-doke.
until
Awesome.
next time. All right, thank you. Thank you all.